the untold rise of Chris Stapleton. From small-town dreamer to the soulful king of country music, Chris Stapleton never looked like the kind of man the music industry usually turns into a superstar. He did not arrive with flashy outfits, carefully rehearsed celebrity smiles, or headlines designed to create controversy. He arrived with something far more powerful, something rare enough to stop people in their tracks the moment they heard it, a voice filled with pain, truth, fire, and soul. Long before sold-out arenas, Grammy Awards, and standing ovations, Chris Stapleton was simply a quiet man carrying an old guitar, writing songs in small rooms while the rest of the world had no idea a legend was slowly being born. His journey was never built on shortcuts or overnight fame. It was built on years of sacrifice, hidden struggles, endless writing sessions, rejection, patience, and a belief that real music still mattered in a world becoming obsessed with trends. That is what makes his story unforgettable. Every note he sings sounds lived in. Every lyric feels like a scar turned into poetry. Every performance reminds people that authenticity can still rise above noise. When audiences first truly discovered him, it felt less like the arrival of a new artist and more like the return of something music had been missing for years. Born in Kentucky, Chris Stapleton grew up surrounded by the raw spirit of rural America, where life was simple but never easy. The mountains, hard-working people, and emotional honesty of small-town living became part of his soul long before he ever stepped onto a stage. His father worked in coal mines, his mother worked at the local health department, and the values of discipline, resilience, and humility shaped him from childhood. In places like that, dreams often stay small because survival comes first. But music became an escape for Chris. It became the language through which he could express emotions too deep for ordinary conversation. While many children chase attention, Chris chased sound. He listened carefully to legends who sang with truth rather than perfection. He admired artists whose voices carried emotions strong enough to make listeners feel every heartbreak and triumph. Even as a young man, there was something timeless about him, as if he belonged to another era where music was measured not by popularity, but by honesty. School never fully captured his spirit, because his imagination kept drifting toward melodies and stories. Still, he was intelligent, focused, and determined enough to earn opportunities beyond his hometown. He attended college and even studied engineering for a time, following a path that appeared practical and secure. But deep inside, music continued calling him louder each day. There comes a moment in many extraordinary lives when comfort and destiny collide, forcing a decision that changes everything forever. For Chris Stapleton, that moment arrived when he realized he could either spend his life wondering what might have happened or risk everything to chase the voice inside him. Choosing music meant uncertainty, sacrifice, and struggle. It meant stepping away from predictable stability into a world where thousands chase dreams and very few survive. Yet some people are simply not designed to ignore their calling. Chris was one of them. Moving to Nashville was not glamorous. It was difficult, lonely, and filled with the invisible battles most audiences never see behind success stories. Nashville is a city overflowing with talent. Every street seems filled with songwriters, hoping for one chance to prove themselves. Dreams live there, but so does heartbreak. Chris entered that world without the polished image many executives preferred. He looked rugged, quiet, and completely uninterested in pretending to be someone else. In an industry obsessed with marketability, that alone made his path harder. But he possessed something impossible to manufacture: raw authenticity. He began writing songs relentlessly, pouring emotion into lyrics, while learning the brutal realities of the music business. Sometimes success arrives not through instant recognition, but through surviving years nobody notices. Chris spent years becoming one of Nashville's secret weapons, writing songs for other artists while his own face remained largely unknown to the mainstream. Songwriting became his battlefield and his classroom. He discovered that words could change lives when combined with the right melody. He wrote songs filled with heartbreak, redemption, longing, and truth because those emotions were real to him. Unlike writers chasing formulas, Chris focused on emotional honesty. Slowly, artists began recognizing his talent. One by one, some of country music's biggest names started recording songs he had written. Suddenly, Even people who had never heard of Chris Stapleton were unknowingly feeling the power of his creativity through radios across America. He wrote for stars like Kenny Chesney, George Strait, Luke Bryan, Thomas Rhett, and many others. His fingerprints were everywhere in Nashville, long before his own. Breakthrough finally arrived, yet success behind the scenes did not erase the hunger inside him. Writing hit songs for others brought respect and stability, but deep down he still carried the dream of singing his own truth to the world. Many talented writers remain trapped in the shadows forever, because the industry often separates songwriters from stars. Chris could easily have stayed comfortable in that role, earning a solid career without risking public failure. But comfort rarely creates greatness. The artist inside him refused to stay silent. He formed bands, performed tirelessly, and continued sharpening his identity. One of those groups, the Steel Drivers, allowed audiences to witness the intensity of his voice in a way Nashville had not fully embraced yet. The mix of bluegrass, southern soul, and emotional grit made listeners stop and pay attention. Even then, there was a feeling that Chris Stapleton belonged to something bigger than any category. His voice did not sound manufactured. It sounded earned. It sounded like heartbreak at midnight, like hard work under the summer sun, like memories that refused to disappear. In an era when technology often polished every flaw out of music, Chris reminded people that imperfections could become beauty. Fans connected with him because he sounded human, real, vulnerable, powerful. There was no fake persona to decode. What you heard was who he was. Still, mainstream superstardom remained frustratingly distant. The industry admired him, respected him, and depended on his songwriting. But it did not fully know what to do with him as a solo artist. He did not fit neatly into radio trends dominating country music at the time. Many executives doubted whether someone with such a classic, soulful sound could become commercially massive in a modern market obsessed with polished pop country formulas. But history repeatedly proves that authenticity eventually breaks through when audiences become hungry for something real. Then came the moment that changed everything. In 2015, Chris Stapleton released an album called Traveler, and it felt less like a commercial product and more like a deeply personal confession. The album carried pain, freedom, reflection, and emotional depth. Unlike much of what mainstream country audiences had been hearing, songs were not designed simply to entertain. They were designed to make people feel. The title track carried a restless spirit. Tennessee Whiskey transformed an already respected song into something hypnotic and unforgettable. Every performance sounded raw and alive. But even then, nobody could predict how quickly the world was about to discover him. The turning point exploded during the CMA Awards performance with Justin Timberlake. In a single night, millions of viewers suddenly witnessed what Nashville insiders had known for years. Chris Stapleton walked onto that stage looking more like a rugged drifter than a modern celebrity. But the moment he opened his mouth, the room changed. The performance became electric, emotional, and impossible to ignore. Audiences watching at home immediately searched his name. Social media erupted. Music fans who had grown tired of artificial sounds suddenly felt awakened by something authentic. It was not merely a performance. It was an introduction to an artist who represented the soul many people thought mainstream music had lost. Overnight fame often destroys people because they are unprepared for the pressure. But Chris Stapleton had already survived years of struggle. Before success finally arrived, he was not a teenager, overwhelmed by sudden attention. He was a seasoned artist whose talent had been tested in silence long before applause became loud. That maturity helped him handle fame differently. He never seemed desperate for celebrity culture. Instead, he remained grounded in the music itself. Fans respected him even more because success did not transform him into someone artificial. Traveler became a massive success, winning awards and dominating conversations across genres. Critics praised its honesty. Fans connected with its emotional depth. Even listeners who normally ignored country music found themselves drawn into Chris Stapleton's voice because it carried universal emotion. His success also represented something bigger than one artist. It proved that audiences still craved authenticity. It proved that soul could still defeat trends. It proved that patience and craftsmanship still mattered. Behind every powerful artist stands personal sacrifice invisible. To most audiences, Chris Stapleton's wife, Morgan Stapleton, became one of the most important figures in his journey. Their relationship was not built on celebrity status or public image. It was built on partnership, creativity, loyalty, and belief during difficult years when success remained uncertain.